Well, um, let's see. So last week we talked about MELs. We talked about the CRJ 700. Um, we talked about some of the basics of the aircraft. So, and then we did the weight and balance. So let's see. Name who can tell me what the three different sources of power are on the CRJ 700?
ADU, APU,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, ADG, APU. Let me write this down. IDG, APU, and ADG.
Yes. Perfect. And which one of those is the primary source of power?
The IDG is the primary.
Okay. And
The APU,
how many IDGs are there on board the aircraft?
2 engine, 2.
Yep. Okay. And then what was your you were saying the secondary source of power was what?
The APU, it's the backup generator and provides bleed air to the air conditioning system and the engine starting.
Great. Perfect. So what stages of the engine are used as a source for bleed air?
Sorry, I just gotta kind of write these down. It's kind of going a little fast.
What
Sixth and
stages?
6th and 10th, yeah.
Yep. So yeah, the 6th and the 10th stage.
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So what stages of the engine provide the bleed air?
And then you said the 6th and the 10th stage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Trying to find where I wrote that, but I can't find it.
Hey, Garrett, sorry, are we covering NOTAMs as well on this quiz?
Covering what?
NOTAMs.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about NOTAMs as well.
I just was making sure. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So did you get that, Matt?
I did, yes, thanks.
Okay. All right. So talking about the bleed air, what areas are anti-use to using the bleed air?
What areas are anti-what?
Anti-ice using the bleed air.
Wings.
Okay.
And the engine counts.
Yep. Perfect. All right.
Sorry, what was it? Wings and.
The engine cowls.
Oh, okay.
All right. Let's see. So, what provides the emergency source of power?
The ID. The ADG.
Perfect. So the ADG provides that emergency power. And what hydraulic pump does it drive, basically? What hydraulic pump does it power?
The
3
third.
Bravo.
3 Bravo. Okay. So how many systems are there? How many hydraulic systems are there?
3.
Okay, perfect. And
Kind of confused if this is all one question or if this was already like 3 questions.
well, this is like just a total review of the test. We've
Yeah.
gone over.
Well, I'm talking about just now. Like, never mind. So all I got was what are the 3 sources of power? What stages of the engine provides bleed air, and what provides the emergency source of power? I didn't get the 4th question.
So I asked what areas of the aircraft are anti-iced using the bleed air.
What areas? No. That's the 2nd question you went through. I think we're on like the 4th question. I didn't get the 4th one down. It's what provides the emergency source of power. It's the question after that.
I have no idea. I'm not going in a specific order.
What hydraulic pump does it power? Or I think that's the
Yeah.
one you're looking for.
Probably. Yeah, it's we've kind of covered the primary sources of power. We've gone over the what the IDGs do, how many of the IDGs are there, the APUs or the APU, and what does it power. We talked about the stage of the engine that the bleed air comes from. We've talked about hydraulic pumps. How many hydraulic pumps are there? Which one is powered by the ADG? Let's see. I think that's pretty much everything we've covered.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I'm not a fast writer because it's kind of hard to write fast when everyone
I
is
understand.
kind of going on.
And we're going over it, so
One thing too, Matt, is just remember you can always get back on here and rewatch these. So I mean, if you don't feel like you got to like hurry and jump in and write every little detail down. I mean, because you can always you can jump back on and review it as well. So
yeah, so we're just kind of I'm not going over the exact questions of the test. We're just hitting the subjects and making sure you understand the principles that we've gone over.
Yeah. Okay.
These are all parts of the test. They're going to be on the quiz, but we want to make sure that you're understanding not just the questions on the test, but the overall subject of what you need to know. So I'm just kind of bouncing around on the systems really quick, and then we'll go into some of the other subjects we covered. So, still talking about the CRJ 700. What are the important weights that we need to know?
You need to know the max ramp, the max takeoff, the max landing, and the max zero fuel.
Perfect. Do you know what the weights are for those?
Yeah. The max ramp is 75,250. The max takeoff is 75,000. Max landing is 67,000. And the max zero fuel is 62,300 pounds. All in pounds.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
And in an easy way, I found out if I like to remember all those is I just remember like 75,000 pounds is like my base weight, and then like if I add the ramp, it's going to put another 250 on. And then when I'm landing, I'm going to have less fuel, so that's 67. And then when I have no fuel in, the only amount I have left is going to be the 62.3. So if I just remember that 75,000 pounds is my base weight, I can remember the other three that way.
Yeah, perfect. That's kind of what I do too. Is I memorize that max takeoff weight, and then I'm able to bounce around, because typically our taxi fuel is taxi. We only worry about the taxi out, right, from the ramp to the runway. If we land and there is absolutely no fuel in the aircraft when we land, which probably, well, hopefully would never happen, that's okay, because we can get towed to the ramp, right? But the only fuel that we kind of like count on is that 250 pounds of taxi fuel. Other than that, we don't really care. So that 75 plus the 250, perfect. It gives us our ramp, and then, like you said, we can land at 67, max zero fuel weight, 62,300. Okay, great. Still talking about the CRJ. We talked about primary and secondary flight controls. Somebody give me some secondary flight controls that we can find on the CRJ.
Horizontal stabilizer trim, multifunction spoilers, ground spoilers, aileron and rudder trim systems, and stats and flaps. Slats and flaps. Sorry.
Okay. Now, one of those sounded like you said was the multifunction spoilerons. The multifunction spoilerons are primary, so who can name the other three primary flight controls?
Elevator, rudder, ailerons, and the multifunction. You already said that, right?
Yeah, so the ailerons, the rudder, the elevator, and the multifunction spoilerons. So, perfect. Yeah, the multifunction spoilerons can be used to help us control the aircraft at slow speed. So, and then the ailerons, once again, they help control the roll. And then the elevators help control the pitch. And then the rudder helps control our yaw. Those are the three axes of flight, right? So,
Can you name the secondary ones again?
Go ahead, Matt.
Horizontal stabilizer trim, slats and flaps, ground spoilers, and aileron and rudder trim systems.
Perfect. So basically your trim systems for all your flight controls, right? Flaps and slats. All right. So we also talked about a couple safety speeds, takeoff decision speed. What were those speeds called again? What did we refer to them as?
V1, VR, V2.
Great. So what is V1? What do we call that?
Just like a decision speed.
Yeah, that's our takeoff decision speed.
The V1?
Yeah, V1 is our takeoff decision speed. we have 3 speeds, right? The V1, VR, and V2. So if V1 is our takeoff decision speed, what is our takeoff safety speed?
V2.
Okay. And VR is?
Rotation.
All right. Let's see. Okay, we talked about the AC packs on the aircraft as well. So what are the restrictions we usually find when it comes to the AC packs?
Single pack operations is up to or to 310.
310?
Yes, 310.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So our pack restricts our flight level, right, to 310. Let's see. So is there anything else that would be related? Not really, right?
I was just gonna say you can't really run the pack deferred APU, but I think that's it.
So looking at our AC packs, yeah, we're restricted to 310, and that's pretty much the only penalty we take. I'm looking at the MEL right now just to make sure, just to see if it says anything else. But I'm not seeing anything else. The only thing that I see that really, like, I don't even want you guys to remember, but basically, if both packs are out, we're restricted to flights below 10,000 feet. But don't worry about that. Just the important thing to remember is flight level restrictions. So, and what are the restrictions we tend to see with the bleed air system, MEL?
I'm sorry, you said what are the restrictions we see with the bleed air?
Yeah. If the bleed air is MEL'd. Think about what
Can't go into anti or icing.
perfect. Yeah, so what are the main functions of the bleed air?
The air conditioning and engine. Yeah, the bleed air is for the air conditioning, isn't it?
Yeah,
To start the engines.
yeah, it's used to for the environmental control system, right? The ECS, and then it's also used for engine start, right?
hmm
So what else do you think could be a restriction if we have something in the bleed air system, up?
Wouldn't it be a certain you can only go a certain altitude?
So yeah, um, one of the restrictions could be a flight level restriction.
Okay.
So
Is a restriction not flying into a hot climate?
no, well,
Okay, or cold? No.
no. So that's not going to be a restriction that we place on the aircraft. Um, that's something we're going to do for pilot and customer, like passenger comfort. It'd be really bad, and that's the same with the packs out. If the pack's out, another thing that we could see is let's see. For some reason, let me double check something really quick.
While you're looking that up, also, I would imagine if you better make sure that they have airport facilities for ground start if they don't have a
Okay.
ability to AC start.
Yeah, that's the same with the. Um, I mean, that's something that the bleed air also, right? Just 1 second. Um, so we've covered those both pretty well. I'm just trying to figure out if there's an additional one that I'm forgetting. But um, anyways, I'll let you know if something else happened or if there's something else. So what MEL restrictions are generally associated with a weather radar system?
Is it that if the weather radar system is out, we cannot dispatch an aircraft into obviously bad weather?
Right.
And if there's not any way to get around it, then we probably can't dispatch that airplane if there's bad weather everywhere.
Yeah. So um, yeah. So the aircraft cannot be flown where there's thunderstorms or potentially hazardous weather under IFR or night VFR conditions, right? So basically, we just got to make sure that there's no weather problems en route.
So is that the same as the VMC? Is that what we're thinking? Is that what we're? I'm getting confused. Is that different? Okay.
So this is specifically talking about IFR or VFR conditions. So
Okay.
that part I wouldn't be so worried about. The key point and the key takeaway of that MEL is that we can't dispatch them into thunderstorms or potentially hazardous weather. I mean, that's the key takeaway.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So, all right, let me see. I'll try to pull up another thing here really quick. Alrighty. So, what does notice, or sorry, what does NOTAM stand for?
Notice to airmen.
Good. And what are the three types of NOTAMs?
D, FDC, and M, which they no longer use, I believe.
Perfect. So, yeah.
Sorry, what was what were you said? What were the three? What were the three types of NOTAMs?
Yep.
I got D. I'm looking back at my notes. I got. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Okay, apparently, I don't have that down. I thought I did.
So, three types of NOTAMs that we use are D, M, and FDC.
Did you tell us to write that down before, or was it just more of a memorization?
I believe we wrote that one down.
I don't know. I don't have it written down. Oh, wait a minute. I am. Oh, okay, never mind. I have it down. Sorry. I was just
No,
in the
you're
beginning of the class. Sorry, I just didn't see it.
You're fine. All right. So, let's see who wants to decode this NOTAM that's highlighted.
Can I?
Go ahead.
See, so this METAR is for Salt Lake City International. It's the second month, or it's the second month, and there has been 93 NOTAMs in the second month. It's located at Salt Lake City Airport for runway 16 left. The PAPI is out of service, and it will be in effect from 2018 of February of the 13th day at 18:30 Zulu, all the way to year 18 February the 13th at 2300 Zulu.
Okay. So,
What's the poppy?
does anybody know what a PAPI is?
Precision
Yeah,
approach.
that's the four light system on the, I think, the left side.
Okay. What does it stand for? Somebody was saying.
Precision something, I can't remember.
Precision approach. That's all I have. I don't know what the PI would be. Precision approach. Don't have the rest. Sorry.
Precision approach path indicator.
I just remember 2 whites, 2 reds, and you're good.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to find another one here.
If that's out of service, does that just mean you can't use that runway?
Can't. It's a visual approach. Can't do it.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Garrett.
Yeah.
With these NOTAMs, say I was dispatching a plane to a runway that was like had some kind of navigation system down, but say it was supposed to be up by 3 and my flight's going to be there at 4, so I think it's fine. What if it gets there and it's not not back in service? Is that like a fault on my part, or where would that go?
So that would not be. We would just have to. So if you were to dispatch a flight and they say there's an hour difference between when it says it's supposed to be back in service and when it actually is in service, and your ETA, and the important thing that we would have to do is we would have to flight follow, right, and watch and make sure that if it was a lighting system that we were counting on being back in service, like a PAPI isn't going to affect our landing minimums, but say it was like your runway centerline marking, or like the ALSIF 1 or ALSIF 2 lighting systems, or a Mauser even. Say it was something that we were predicating our landing minimums on being in service. Basically, we would just have to make sure that that was in service on the flight prior to the ETA. We'd just have to watch it. If it doesn't come back up, then we would have to divert. Now,
All right, that makes sense. I kind of forgot that you have to watch it as it's going.
no, and that's just as long as you're like that would only be if when they got there and were about to start their approach, like it was still out of service and they were below minimums. If they were to use a different approach, does that make sense? So
Yeah.
if it's out of service, like if it goes out of service and it's just like toast for the day, then we just have to. They'd either have to shoot another approach or go to the alternate. So
So, following on that same train of thought. So maybe you're 20 minutes to landing, and how are you? Do you have the ability in the commercial world, the 121 operation, to see if where does that pop up, or does it just pop up as a note that you're tracking on that flight, or how do you know?
Yeah, so we just watch it. It'll be in the NOTAMs say it didn't clear out of the NOTAMs at that time, we could call the airport and say, hey, is that lighting system back online? The NOTAM says that it was going to be back online at this time. I've got a flight coming in that's, and they would tell me at that time, and then I'd just relay that information to the pilot. So, but we're gonna dispatch off of like what's legal when we at the point of dispatch. Like we can't put our entire operation on hold just to make sure that it came online. If they say that it's going to come back online in a certain time period, then that is their job to make sure that that's back online by that time. So, because they know that there's operations depending on it. Now, like I said before, if it all breaks loose and they just can't get it repaired or back in service by the time our flight's getting there, we just need to call and make sure with the airport, and then we're just going to stay in that close communication with our pilot, and we're going to let him know as soon as we can whether or not it's safe to start the approach. And if it's not, then we'll just have him go to the alternate. If it's not legal, it's not legal. If it's something, say that we could call the airport and they're like, you know what, give us another 20 minutes and it'll be back up, or something to that case. Now we're talking like huge what if scenarios, right? So this isn't necessarily real world scenarios. I mean, it can be, but it probably won't be. But say the airport's like, hey, give us 20 minutes. We could also have them hold for 20 minutes if we have that fuel on board. Just it's going to be between you and the pilot to make that call. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
All right. Let's see if I can pull this up. I can't remember my JEP chart password. I'll pull that up sometime tonight and we'll take a look at some of those. All right, let's see. So what is a denotum?
Information on status on navigational equipment, runways, taxiways, radios, and physical equipment at the airport.
Okay. Yeah, so we call it a local NOTAM. And that's exactly right. It's giving us information on, if there's any closures on the airport, obstructions, taxiway closures, or runway closures, runway lighting, anything like that. So, if an approach is down, say the ILS is out of service, we'll see that on there as well. So what is an FDC NOTAM then?
it's dealing with procedures. Anything to do with irregularities on procedures.
Yeah, exactly. So it's it's talking about the procedures coming in and out of the airport. So we're talking mostly SIDS and stars, right? Arrivals and departures, um, things of that nature. So let's see. I'm trying to find a good one. Oh, here we go. Okay. This kind of goes along with the question that we just kind of went over. Evan, why don't you give this one a shot?
All right. So 700th NOTAM in December for Denver Airport. Denver runway 16 left, or 16L. I don't know what that means. RTHL.
Okay.
Out of service.
So the RTHL, you had the 16 left, right? We call it 16 left. The RTHL stands for runway threshold lights.
All right, so the runway threshold lights are out of service 27th of December 2017, beginning at 13:31 Zulu and ending on February 28, 2018 at 2100 Zulu.
Okay. What does that EST stand for, do you think?
Estimated.
Perfect. So yeah, that's when they don't have like an official time locked down. So if I saw something like that estimated, and I was dispatching a flight and say our ETA was at 2200 Zulu, I would probably put a little extra hold fuel on there. And just in case, I'd put a little extra hold fuel. I'd probably, depending on how the weather is, if it was close to minimums, like say it was right at 3 miles and 2,000 foot ceilings, in my forecast, I would probably put an alternate just to be safe. And that way, it's all situational, and you just got to play it by ear. But you kind of want to be cautious when planning a flight if you rely on that, on that lighting system. Say it was, out in the middle of nowhere, and we were relying on the lighting system to be up and active. So. Trying to find a good FDC. Yeah, it's all right. So FDCs read a lot like our NOTAMs do, and we kind of went over them good last time we talked about them. Once again, date stamp. We've got Salt Lake City, Utah, ILS or Localizer for runway 34 left. This is Amendment 3C. So this is just saying the Localizer 34 left. The MDA is 4640. And 4640, what would that be? Would that be mean sea level, or would that be above ground level, AGL?
I have no idea.
So
MSL.
yeah, so that's going to be our MSL. Let's see. Not that one. There we go. We'll get there, folks.
Garrett, my friend was saying to ask you about looking at the NOTAMs in the raw form. Is that how you guys look at it normally, or the way you guys are showing us how to read them?
So that is the raw form. Oops.
Okay, that is the raw form. Okay.
Let's see. My goodness. There we go. Yeah, so this is the raw form.
Okay.
Now, if you go back to here, we can do the report, and if we look at them like this, apron air carrier, apron access 14 closed. What in the world? Yeah, see, like, look at our date stamp. It's a lot easier to read.
That's what I think that's what she was trying to tell me, is why she said to look at it the other way, and I was like, oh, I don't know, I'll ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, so these ones, it abbreviates it a little bit. I mean, NOTAMs are pretty easy to read and understand. Like they're kind of intuitive. The only part that's hard to understand, if you don't know what you're looking at, would be the timestamp, really.
Okay.
For the most part, though, NOTAMs aren't too bad. Now, when we start talking METARs and TAFs and PIREPs, we start running into a little bit more difficult to translate. It's a lot more shorthanded. So, but there's tricks to reading them and understanding them.
Gotcha.
So, let's see. So we were talking about the approach for 3-4 left in the MDA, right? Let's see. We're going down here to 3-4 left. So here's our JEP chart. 16 left. 16 right. 17. Got to be getting there. 3-4 left. Okay. So when it's talking about the MDA, it's talking about this number here. So basically, it's just increasing the MDA by 100 feet. Does everybody see that? That NOTAM?
Yes.
You mean it's increasing the DA by 100 feet?
Right. Let's see. Oh, I've got it right here. So let's go back down here. Yeah, so the Localizer, runway 34 left, MDA 4640. Goodness sakes, I've got way too many tabs up. So yeah, so it's just talking about the standard localizer approach, the MDA for the standard localizer. Here we see the localizer. and it goes from 4560 up to 46. What was it? 4640. So it's 80 feet, right? You just raise it. So that FDC NOTAM will be in place until they release new charts, basically. Now these charts are really old. Been using them for a while, but the content and how it's formatted is identical. That doesn't change. So
you kind of shot past one of those there a minute ago. So in general, going from a decision altitude to the MDA for the localizer as opposed to the ILS, so it's non-precision. They're going to add not always 100, but some amount for increased security.
So that's only for that NOTAM. So that's only for this NOTAM. That's
Okay, I have no idea what you guys just said. What?
Well, what I'm thinking, my thought is, if it's a localizer as opposed to ILS, that would make sense for them to add a little more safety margin to it.
Yeah, so it's, I don't know why they're doing it, but yeah. So here's your ILS minimums, and you're right in your thinking of it. ILS is a lot more precise, so our minimums are always going to be the lowest on our ILS. But if the glide slope part of the ILS goes out of service, then we use a localizer approach. And this is just telling us our altitude. And yet our ceilings we've got a little bit more of a restriction on our ceilings, right? Our ceilings automatically go up 134 feet, which really equates to 400 or 200 feet total, right? But that NOTAM, when we apply that NOTAM that we're looking at, it just raises that another 80 feet to increase the margin of safety. So yeah.
I'm just trying to make sense of why they're doing things on those NOTAMs.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly why they decided they needed another 80 feet on there, but yeah. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know why they do some of the things that they do. Maybe
it does. That makes perfect sense. Now, why they would choose that number of feet, I don't know, but it makes sense to add as opposed to lose.
Right. Yeah, I don't. On a localizer approach, I don't think they would, make it a little bit better. It would always go more negative, right? So, but yeah, we'll keep using these JEP charts. We're going to get really familiar with them over the next little while. But let's see. So we've covered this quiz pretty thoroughly and some.
So just before we leave that topic, so the decision altitude, well, the MDA is mean sea level. DA, is that AGL?
Sorry, go again. Say again.
So is the decision altitude AGL if MDA is MSL?
So if we look at the DA here, decision altitude, the decision altitude is going to be this first part, this first number, and that's always MSL. Now, if we switch the DA for DH, the H in parentheses, then that's the decision height or height above the ground, which would be 200 feet above the ground. which is your AGL. Does that make sense?
It does. It's been like a few days, which makes it
Yeah.
a different life ago that we learned that.
Yeah. And it's the same thing here. So you got MDA, which is the minimum decision altitude.
Got it. I'm up to speed now.
Yeah.
Sorry. I took me a minute
No,
to
you're
wrap my
fine.
head around it.
You're fine. I'm just making sure that everybody's got it down. But the A stands for altitude, and the H stands for uh, um, yeah, the H stands for height. That's the way I remember which one's AGL, MSL. I don't know that. I've looked at enough of these that it's kind of second nature now. But back when I was going through training, that's how I remembered altitude and height. So
So what are the important weights we need to know again?
what was that? I'm sorry.
What are the important weights we need to know again?
Important. I'm sorry.
Important weights.
Important weights. Was it you, CJ, that gave me those weights?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to do those again?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, I dropped my thing on my headphones. Okay. The takeoff weight is going to be like your base weight of 75,000 pounds. And then your ramp weight is going to be 250. But then after you fly and some of that weight goes away from your fuel being burned, your landing weight is going to be 67,000 pounds. And then if you have no fuel in your airplane, your zero fuel weight is 62,300.
Yep. So your max ramp weight is 75,250.
Yep.
Your max takeoff is 75.
Uh-huh.
And then your max landing is 67. And your max zero fuel is 62,300.
Yep.
So
Okay.
perfect.
Thank you, CJ.
No problem.
All right. Let's see. All that. Anybody else have any questions on the quiz? Anything we've covered?
What provides the emergency source of power?
So we've got the IDGs, which are our primary source. Our
IDG.
APU. Yeah, so IDGs are primary source. APUs are secondary or auxiliary, right? Do you remember the last acronym? It's called a RAT on.
RAT.
No, not on the CRJ 700. That's on the ERJ. But some airplanes have a ram air turbine, and then other planes have this.
The rat's the little turbine that pops out of the side of the plane, right?
Only on the ERJ. We call it
Yeah.
something else on the CRJ.
Oh.
Okay, so I got the IDGs and APU. IDGs is primary and the APU is a secondary.
And then there's ADG.
ADG, okay.
There we go. So ADG stands for air driven generator. And what hydraulic pump does it power? again?
Which one?
The ADG. What hydraulic pump does it power?
The ADG is the air-driven generator, the emergency power.
Okay. Which hydraulic pump specifically?
Oh, I'm sorry, 3 Bravo.
Okay, perfect.
3
Okay,
Bravo.
I was gonna say 3A, but 3 Bravo sounds, yeah, okay.
Yeah, 3B.
3B.
So remember that there's always a primary and a backup. So primary and redundancy in every system, right? So the A's will always be your primary and B's will always be your backup.
Okay.
So so system 1 powers, I believe it's, what is it, the left side of the aircraft basically. System 2 powers the right side, and then system 3 is a backup system.
Okay, but that was here. But that was and then what are the restrictions we find when it comes to the AC packs?
Does anybody want to remember what we covered on that one?
Say it
It's a
again.
flight level.
Go ahead.
Oh, the flight. Didn't I say flight level before?
Yeah, we.
Wait, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
What are the restrictions we find when it comes to AC pack?
I can't hear you very well, Matt.
What are the restrictions we find when it comes to the AC packs?
Oh, okay. I just have the single pack operations are limited to the flight level 310.
Okay.
Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard to find in my notes. I just can't find it. That's why I'm asking.
Oh.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, sir.
Main functions of the bleeder, and then that's all I need. I got everything else. And then because I'm trying to find the main functions, I don't have that either. So I would say that the main functions of the bleeder. I would say the main functions are air conditioning and engine starting.
So, so engine start and yeah, so air conditioning, pressurization, right?
Okay. Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Yep. And then yeah. Were there any other questions from anybody? So remember, we can. This has all been recorded, so I'll have this up on YouTube tonight. You guys can review any of the questions that we've gone over tonight.
Okay.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah. I was just a little worried because usually the videos don't get uploaded until a day later, and if we have I wouldn't have time to study if it got uploaded tomorrow.
There's been twice that's happened, but yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's pretty commonly up the night of.
But let's see. All right. Well, let's take a break. Do you guys need a lunch? Well, I guess dinner break or shorter break.
Dinner.
Did you say dinner?
Be a good time for dinner for me.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, let's do a 30-minute dinner break. Let's say 7:15 back online. So.
Sounds good.
All right, so did a pretty thorough review of the quiz, and how do you guys feel about it? You guys feel like you're ready for it?
I think so. Yeah.
I feel like this is a little more. I feel like this is a little harder than the other tests I've taken because a lot to memorize or a lot to study over.
Yeah, there's a lot, but just rewatch this video that tonight or tomorrow, and it covers it pretty thoroughly. A lot of good information that we're going to use over the next little while. So,
How many questions are there total?
let me see. 16.
Oh, okay.
So let's see here. So we're going to go over weight and balance. We're just going to do a review on that really quick. Let's see. Did everybody get the chance to download and print their?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. I'm going to post this information for the weight and balance. I want you guys to go through, fill it out on your sheets, and then we'll talk about it. When you guys are done, I'll give you about, how long does it take you guys? You guys feel good at 15 minutes? It's a little faster, but
It takes me about 10 minutes tops to do it.
okay.
But I mean,
so this time I want you guys also to figure out the landing, weight and CG index, and see if we're still going to be in our center of gravity. So,
how do you exactly figure out the landing weight if you don't know how much fuel burn? If you don't know how much they're burning fuel?
So it says it in that thing I just posted. It says the burn will be 12,100 pounds.
Oh, okay.
So, does anybody have any other questions about it?
No.
All right. So I'll give you guys 15 minutes. And go ahead and mute your mics. We'll be back to talk about it in, well, we'll be back to talk about it at 7:35. All right. Is everybody done?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty. Let's go to our
That,
chart.
that one was a little tricky.
Yeah, they get a little fun. Okay. Let's see here. Make sure everything's working. Okay. So we had 66 adults.
Is there a way you can zoom in a little bit? Or
Yeah, let me see here. Okay. Is that better?
just a tiny bit more? Yeah, that's good.
Okay, let's see here. Okay. So we got 66 and 1 here. And then we had 115 bags, right?
Yes.
Okay. So who wants to give me the weight for the adults?
Oh crap! Sorry. 12,870.
Okay. And how did you find that?
How do I find that? I look on the winter passenger section and go down to 67 or 66.
Hard for me to see on my printout, but I thought it said 12,670. But even looking back on it now, I can't really tell which it is.
It's 12,670.
Oh, I got 12,870.
It's pretty hard to see the numbers, at least on my printout.
Yeah, it's hard. Either way, I mean, it's pretty close. Either way, we go here. But 12,000. Oh, let's see.
It's 12,870.
Yeah, it is 12,870. 12,675 for 65 passengers. So either way, you're probably going to get almost identical result. So
Uh,
all right. So for one kid, where did we look for that?
at the bottom, next on the left of the Ford index.
Okay. So right there. We only had one, so that's 87 pounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's our total weight for passengers?
12,957.
Okay. Alrighty. So we put that number here, right?
Yes.
Let's see if we can get this all lined up again. Okay, what was our bow weight?
45,018.
45,000 what?
And 18.
I couldn't hear you again.
45018.
All right. Okay. Now, let's see, what was our index?
71.4.
Okay. All right, everybody, we've heard from Matt. Everybody else needs to participate here. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so now how do we find the index for our passengers?
Scroll down.
Okay.
You got to use the chart at the bottom there. Yeah, that.
Okay. And we started from the front, right? So we put in our 12, 12, 12, and 7, right? Okay, now how do we get the index for those passengers?
You would look on the passenger index table.
Okay. Where am I looking? So let's do zone A first.
Number of packs, so it's minus 19.2.
Okay. And zone B?
Minus 13.9. Minus
So
8.5. Minus 3.1. Positive 2.8. And then positive 4.8.
all right. Perfect. Now we're going to need to put those on our pin card here. So this first one was what?
Yep, 19.2.
Next one?
13.9. 8.5. 3.1. 2.8. And 4.8.
Okay. Oops. So what's our negative index?
I believe it's negative 44.7.
And our positive?
7.6.
Okay. So we move our positive down below. And what did we get for our total here?
Negative 37.1 is what I have.
All right. We put put it in our negative side here. Okay, so how much, or how do we figure out our aft cargo? How many bags did we have?
115. So you would look on the right side of the fuel index. It says cargo aft.
Okay, where do I go with that?
And let's see.
You need your bag weight on the other side first.
Okay, so 115. Now, Matt, where do I look on this side?
You look at 2450 because the forward limit was 1,000. So you look. Let's see. So you go to 2430 and 2490, and then the index would be around 16.3.
Okay. So are we trying to figure out the forward limit, or are we trying to figure out the aft here?
You have to take the 115 bags and subtract 1,000 for your aft calculation.
Okay.
Don't you just scroll to the bottom of cargo aft and find 3450?
So
That's what I did.
Sorry, it wasn't very clear on the instruction here.
Well, the reason why I said what I said on the cargo aft was because the instructions were 1,000 pounds on the forward limit on the forward cargo.
Right.
So I just subtracted.
Yeah,
And that's.
I just calculated the total bags and then subtracted out 1,000 for the one, and then the 1,000 bags maxed out for the forward.
Perfect.
Oh, okay.
So our total weight is the 3450, but we're putting 1,000 pounds of that in our forward cargo. So it wasn't.
Oh, I thought there was just already 1,000 pounds in there.
That's how I read it too. I thought there was 115 bags plus an additional 1,000 pounds of cargo that we were allocating to the forward cargo.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
Me too.
Sorry about the misleading instructions. I should have clarified that.
It was a connecting flight from Alaska. There was a connecting flight from an Alaska with a bunch of tuna on there or something.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm sure your guys' numbers still look really good.
But I don't know about everyone else that did it, but I was over on my zero weight, and so that's why I was a little confused.
Mm-hmm. So we'll keep going with this way, and we'll count, or we'll see what the difference is. How about that?
Okay.
So I got 16.3 for the index.
Okay. Let's see. So aft cargo was
2450.
okay. And what was that index?
16.3.
Oh, not negative. My bad. Sorry, autopilot kicked on there. But I caught it. And we put 1,000 pounds there. And what was our CG here, or our index?
Negative 5.4.
5.1?
4.
Oh, okay.
No.
It was negative 5.4.
Oh, negative 5.4. My bad. Sorry, I have really bad ears. Don't know if I've told you guys that before. Makes my wife really angry sometimes.
Good excuse.
Our little secret, right?
Okay, so for this, I put 195 instead of 190 because it's winter.
Okay. So it's not going to change anything very much. But when it comes to our forward observer, all it wants is you to use this regardless of weight, of winter or summer. So for this, we do the 190 and the 2.3. I can see where you're coming from, but the chart gives you a specific number, and so that's what the chart requires. It's a little weird, I know, but yeah, some things they want you to interpret right, some things they just want you to do it. So, well, it's kind of confusing. Yeah. And I think most of it is because it only gives you the one index, right? I don't think it would change your CG at all, your index, but sorry, I keep calling it CG, but it's really index. But yeah. Weird, right? It's kind of like if you bring a carry-on board, it weighs nothing, but as soon as you put it underneath the aircraft, all of a sudden it weighs 30 pounds.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
So basically, it's do whatever you want. I don't know. I don't understand how it all calculates out, but they've been doing it for years and they're pretty accurate. So, all right. So, what is our negative index?
Let's see. It'd be 44, negative 44.8.
Okay. And what was our positive total?
$87.7. Yeah, I'm not gonna talk anymore. I feel like I'm not giving everyone a chance.
You good?
You're fine. Some of us are following along because we got that original weight wrong, so.
That's me
Correct.
too.
All righty. So, our zero fuel weight index, what was the total here?
thing. I just had it. It was like 61 something. Okay. 2450 plus. It is 61,585.
Okay. And what's our index? Wait, that one's wrong. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. 615. Does that add up right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna double check it here. Double check my math. All right. Nailed it. Everybody agree with what I just did there? 87.7 minus 42.9.
The heck? I added the index 10 numbers wrong with that. I have to change that.
Alrighty. Everybody following along so far?
Yes.
Alrighty.
You know, when you're watching it, you go through it and it just looks smooth as butter. And then when you actually start like doing it yourself, when you actually start like putting the numbers in, then you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. It's definitely, something that takes like doing it a couple times over and over and over. That repetition just yeah. For me, I'm so visual and like I have to sit there and do it over and over and over again or else I forget what I'm doing. Let's see. So we had 14,600 pounds of fuel. What was our index for that? How did we find that?
You just you would go to the fuel index on the right side.
Okay. So what did you guys come up with there?
1.2.
I got 1.0.
That's what I got to 1.02 and then rounded it to 1.0.
Okay. So let's see. Yeah, that I agree with that. That 1.0. So we just take 0.9, right? Add a 1.5, and then divide by 2. Actually, 1.2. So did everybody see that?
Yeah. I didn't do all the adding and dividing. Or I just went to the outer numbers and then just kind of worked my way into the middle. That's all.
No, that's fine. That's why the FAA says interpolate, right? They want you to just kind of give it your best guess while looking at the chart. So this is one of the times that you see the fuel index a positive number, right? 14,000 to 18 or 17,500 is that sweet spot where we actually get a positive CG. So we just add these two together to give us our takeoff weight and index. What was our takeoff index?
It would be 44.1.
Okay. And
This one would be 76,215.
oops.
Now Garrett, that is overweight.
Is it?
Yes,
By how many pounds?
by 1,215 pounds.
Okay.
So can I tell you what I did real quick?
Yep.
So every number that we've been going through, it is completely different on every box on mine, because what I did was, um, I I kicked off 7 passengers and redid all this math. And if you kick off 7 passengers, you get rid of 1,000 odd something pounds. So I ended up getting 74,855 pounds after I kicked off 7 of them, and 74,855 is pretty much the maximum limit you can go.
All right.
And then that's when I got an index of 41.8 after redoing the the seating arrangements and the pin.
So you're saying this was a trick question?
No. So, Matt, you kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but that's fine. So yeah, as a dispatcher at this point, are we legal to send the flight at this weight?
No, sir.
Right. So it would
and
take,
that's when we have to kick
right.
people off.
We would, at that point in time, we would contact the pilot, right? We'd contact the pilot and we'd discuss what we'd want to do. So kicking passengers off is one way. Taking baggage off is another way. Personally, if I were to kick passengers off, I'd probably start with the jump seater. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's
This isn't necessarily relevant, but our new contract at United, even if the the flight has weight problems, they're not allowed to kick off the jump seater anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so when I'm flying, I can list for the jump seat, and they'll actually give me a seat if it's available, and they can't remove me from the flight contractually now, at least on a United flight.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
So now I know if I'm ever stuck somewhere, I can just always jump United.
Right?
Yeah,
Fly
that's
United.
right. United won't kick them off.
That's
Not
perfect,
after all the
actually.
hot water.
I thought that they'd be a little more concerned about their paying customers, but
Yeah, that makes sense, but I don't know if that's because of staffing issues or what. They figure that they're going to have to find someone else to work the flights if their people don't get to base or what.
yeah. So can you, as a flight attendant, list for the jump seat? I didn't think you guys were in the CAS.
Yeah, I'm not in the CAS, so I can't fly in the cockpit, but I can fly the flight attendant jump seat, and then as a flight attendant, I'm allowed to jump seat on other airlines. I have to have a physical seat. I can't take a jump seat, but
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know how it worked for the flight attendants, so. So yeah. So I mean there's different things that we can do to bring this back in weight. But yeah, as of right now, it wouldn't be legal to dispatch. So if we were doing flight planning for our practical, at this point we would go to the date and we would say, hey, Greg, looks like we're overweight. We're at 76,215 pounds. Now, he might ask you, what is your zero fuel weight? Just to see if you're paying attention to that. And make sure that your zero fuel weight isn't what's causing the overweight issue. But yeah, at this point we would notify him of the issue, and he would give us further instructions at that point. Does that make sense to everybody?
So basically, I didn't need to do all that. I mean, I thought that's what we were gonna lead to, was changing the numbers, but that, because that's just what I did. I assumed we were gonna do that. But,
yeah. So I mean, I'm not gonna beat you up over that. I mean, you're thinking ahead, and that's fine. But just make sure that on a practical test setting, you're not jumping the gun or you're not just assuming something, right?
Okay.
These are hard stop points. If at any time when taking a practical test you hit something that makes it not legal to dispatch the flight, then that's what we need to be bringing up to the DAID and notifying him of, because he's going to give us further instructions at that point. He's going to tell us, look, okay, that's fine. We're going to remove 15 passengers, and then, or whatever he tells you to do, that's what you would do at that point, and then you'd continue your flight plan. But you got to make sure though that you're not assuming anything on these flight plans. Everything needs to be very literal, So, like I said, I'm not going to beat you up over something like that, just while we're practicing. But at the same time, just understand that this is a hard stop on a practical. This is something that he'll intentionally throw roadblocks. He could give you the most perfect flight plan where it's like you get it done in 30 minutes and you're out. But then he can also like throw some curveballs at you. And what he's looking for is he's looking for you to be able to identify the issues and fix them. So he wants you to be able to identify them, and then he'll tell you what the fix is, or he'll talk to you about it at that point, you know, and kind of talk you through the problem. He's probably going to ask, you know, why can't we send the flight, you know.
Okay, so you're basically telling me to, you know, just continue with all the math without kind of changing everything, and if it ends up being overweight, then just kind of expect him to ask you the rest of the questions, and then
yeah, just take it very literal. Complete it the way that it's planned, because say it is a passenger weight issue that makes the flight not legal to dispatch. He's gonna ask you, okay, what do you weigh? You know, he's looking for that answer. He's looking for why. Why isn't it legal to dispatch? And if you just say, well, it's overweight, that's not good enough. He wants to know, well, how much overweight is it? Is it overweight at the landing? Is it overweight at the takeoff? Is it overweight at is the zero fuel weight too much? You know, he's not just going to like accept a, well, it's overweight answer. He's looking for information. He's making sure that you're completing the steps and following the right procedure. And this is something that we're going to continue talking about more and more, especially as we get into the flight planning, because this is where everything kind of comes together and the rubber meets the road, right? But yeah, it's important, as I said before, that we stop and make sure they understand and that everybody's on the same page before we continue with the date. So, but good thinking ahead. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, sweet. Well, I know that now. So.
Well, and like I said, it's not a problem. I mean,
yeah.
You did your math right. So, so let's just say that we were legal to send the flight. Let's figure out what our landing weight and index would be. So what do we do at this point?
Do we subtract the burn?
Okay, we subtract the burn. So let's see. So when we subtract the burn, how much was the burn again? 12,000.
12,100, I believe.
Okay, and we subtract that from 14,600 pounds, right? Is that what we had? I can't remember. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, that's right.
So what's our total on that? What would our landing fuel weight be?
2,500 pounds.
2,500 or 3,500?
I got 2,500.
Okay.
Yeah, 25.
I got 25.
Perfect. Sorry, I'm trying to do all this and think at the same time, and that just doesn't work. Okay. And that leaves us with an index of
Negative 1.5 just for the fuel.
Okay. So we bring that down here. And what is our new takeoff? Well, our landing weight?
$64,100.
Okay, and our new index.
41.4.
All right. And what do we do with this number down here?
You're saying what do we do with the landing? Oh, you're saying what do we do with the index number?
With this number right here.
Okay. That would be located on your left side of the graph.
So we come up to 64,115, which would be somewhere right above this line. And then find our index down below. Right?
Okay.
Which would put us somewhere about right there, right? Is it below our max landing weight?
Yes.
All right. What was our weight before we our takeoff weight?
60. No, sorry. It was like 76,000. 215. I think.
Okay, and what was the index on it?
That was. What's that? 76,000. Wouldn't it be oh wait, no, can you scroll up a little bit?
It might have been like 44 or something. I don't have that correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sheet, but
it was
around.
somewhere. So basically somewhere in there, right?
Yeah.
correct.
So we'd be right there and right there. Connect the two. So our CG drops a little bit and goes in inside. It's just we would have to make sure that we dropped it below that max takeoff weight. Good job, guys. Do you guys feel like you're understanding this chart better? Very well?
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna get it. I don't have the whole thing memorized yet, but I'm definitely understanding it.
All right.
For sure.
Well, if there's any questions, let us know. We're more than happy to help you out. We also have the videos of our last class, and then we've gone through this one pretty thoroughly as well, so those can help too. If we're not able to get right back to you, you could also do that. Let's see. All right, perfect. Well, let's take a 10-minute break. When we come back, we'll start talking performance of the CRJ, and then we'll call it a night. So take a 10-minute break. Let's get back on at 8:30.
All right.
All right, is everybody back?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, we have spent a lot of time covering the CRJ and the systems and everything. Now we get into a little more of the practical part once again. So, let's see. So we're going to talk performance cards. This is basically the information. This kind of goes hand in hand with our weight and balance. We use the information we get off the weight and balance to figure out basically our takeoff settings and our speeds. And let's see. So we'll use the information once again off of our that we collected off of our weight and balance. And I don't know why I just shut down my sheet that we just did, but I did. Let's see.
So are we on week 4?
Yes.
Okay.
So when we get done filling all this information out, basically we're going to find our find out if we're within our weight and balance. Let's see. Trying to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see this. Now, when we do our weight and balance, and we, oh my gosh, this computer sometimes. We'll come down here to the graph, and we will find our point on this graph, right? So let's just say that we weighed 68,000 pounds and we're 55 on our index. So we make our dot here. So what we do with these performance cards is we need to find our percentage of MAC. Okay. You can see it up in this corner, this percent of MAC. The way we find that information out is super hard, but we're going to teach you how to do it. Follow along real closely. Did everybody see how I just figured out my percentage of MAC?
Yes, it's yeah.
Pretty hard, right?
Definitely.
Does everybody understand it?
Yeah.
All right. Probably one of the most difficult concepts we'll ever learn in this class. So we'd take that 23% of MAC and our takeoff weight of 68,000 pounds. And then we come over to our performance card. Okay. So 68,000 pounds. And what did I say? Percentage of MAC? 23% of MAC. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I misheard. It's not 37% MAC?
No.
23%.
So
Yeah, I think I'll need to go. For a second, I thought you
so
were talking about the 37 the whole time.
no. So this is just saying my percentage of MAC, right? Sorry if I accidentally scrolled over the 37, but I took our 68,000 pounds at takeoff.
Okay.
I went to our 55.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The numbers are displayed on the top.
All I
Okay.
do is take that straight up.
Okay.
That's my percentage of MAC. So
Okay, I got it.
you got it?
Yeah.
All right. So that's going to help us figure out our flap setting. Because you can notice that on these charts, right? So we're trying to figure out a couple things with this chart. Our V1 speed, right? Our VR speed, V2, okay? Our flap retract speed, and for the octopus, I don't know what the FTO stands for. But it's the speed we don't really care about. So really, I'm just trying to figure out our V1, VR, V2, and our flaps retract speed, and our flap setting. So as you can see on top of all these charts, it also has flaps 8 section and a flaps 20, right? Then at the top, we can see our takeoff weight, right? This chart is if your takeoff weight is 61,000 pounds. Looks like my 2-year-old drawing on these things, but, or my 4-year-old drawing on these things, but we'll make do with what we got, right? So we can see that we have a chart for every single one of our takeoff weights. All the way down to 57,000 pounds.
So they're
Okay.
just rounding off to the thousands.
Yep. So when we're doing our flight planning, we have to figure out what our takeoff speed is going to be. This is where we use our percentage of MAC. Okay. If you notice here, this chart asks for our weight. So we have our weights across the top and then our CG percent of MAC. And those are down this side right here. Okay. So we were 23% of MAC, right? So we'll follow this line to our 68,000 pounds. Oh, it's somewhere in between these two. Super hard to figure that part out, right?
Interpolate, so 7.0.
Yeah, we'll interpolate. If you say 7.0 or 7.1, you're right. Either one of those will work. Okay. So, oh wait. Oh, that's for our stab trim setting. My bad. So, my bad. So we've got to go to our altitude. Well, now you guys know how to find out your stab trim setting. I don't know what I was thinking there. Where is our flap setting? Let's see. Sorry. So I gotta figure this out. Hold on just 1 second. What happened to the worksheet or our performance chart that has that?
So Garrett, while you're finding that, so it's 8 and 20 on takeoff and 45 on landing. Do we calculate the landing as well?
Yeah, so our landing, when we're looking at our landing, let's see, I'm going to go back into that. So, oops. So our landing, we're not as concerned about that, right? The landing speed, we just go off of our landing weight and our flap setting. So maneuvering speed, do you guys remember what the maneuvering speed was?
Is that 0.78 Mach?
No, so our maneuvering speed would be our what is the trying to remember the it's a V speed. I'm trying to remember V. It's a speed that you guys don't need to know. But the VA
is the one you just brought up.
Yeah, so it's VA, right? V sub A. Or hold on. Yeah, V sub A. So I just asked Adam where that chart was. He said that in this class, we will tell you what your flap setting is at takeoff. Basically, a flap setting of 20 is only used for our like short field runways. So if it's a shorter runway, that's the only time we would use a flap setting of 20. So we'll use flap setting of 8 basically every time. Once again, when
Garrett?
yeah.
Just to explain the difference there between 8 and 20. 8 is kind of the default. We always want to use 8 because 8 ultimately gives the best takeoff performance. If you kind of think of it like, you know, like as far as flaps go, the more flaps that you use on takeoff, the more lift the wing is going to create technically. So when you're going down the runway, if you're using flaps 20, you're going to technically be able to lift off of the ground earlier than you would be able to with flaps 8. So, however, because you're lifting off the ground earlier, your actual takeoff weight becomes lower. So if you think of it like this, like the faster you can go, the more weight you'll be able to take on takeoff, or the more payload you'll be able to lift off the ground. The slower, the less weight. So technically, we always want to use 8 degrees because it's going to always give us the higher takeoff performance, more payload that we'll be able to lift off the ground. But there are certain scenarios where we have to use 20. Like if the runway that we're using is a really short runway, then we technically need to be able to get off the ground quicker. So we go to flaps 20 and bring it down, bring that V1 speed that, all of the V speeds will decrease at that point. But if you go, your actual V2 speed will be a lot lower than it would be with flaps 8. So, but on the flip side of that, your takeoff weight also gets penalized for that. So in this class, we always want to default to 8. All of the airports and stuff that we're going to use in the class are going to have nice big long runways. So you're not normally going to see a situation where you use flaps 20. It's kind of something more you learn kind of more in advanced dispatch, like when you do specific airline training. They'll actually show you, specific airports and things like that where it'll default to flaps 20. So anyway, yeah, it's just specific situations, but yeah, in this class, we just plan on flaps 8.
So, that being said, the way we determine our V1, VR, V2 speeds is, as you can see, for our V2 speed, it's really hard, right? Flaps 8, automatically a 138. But to figure out our other speeds here, what we're going to do is we're going to take our pressure altitude, in this class, we're just going to take the altitude of the field that we're taking off of. We're not going to figure out the pressure altitude and all of that, but basically we're going to figure out our the altitude of the field. So let's say Salt Lake is at 4,200 feet, right? So we just take that 4,000, and then we would take the temperature outside. So let's say it's 20 degrees outside. That gives us our V1 speed. Same down here, we'd take 20 degrees and 4,000 foot field elevation, and then 138. So your flap retract speeds, once again, they're just going to stay the same. As long as you're within flaps 8, right? Flaps 20, you would retract flaps 8 regardless of what's going on up here. You'd retract flaps 8 at 144, 152 for 1, and then 175 for 0. So I don't know. The pilots, when I was jump seating, basically they just got up to this 175 speed and retracted them all at the same time. And it doesn't hurt the airplane, right? Because our maximum flaps extended speed is 220 knots, I believe. So as long as they're retracting the flaps before that they hit that speed, it won't cause damage to the aircraft. The only thing that it does do when they retract the flaps is basically, like Adam was talking about, flaps increase the lift of the aircraft. They also increase the drag, and that's why we get worse performance numbers out of our flaps 20 setting. But they do help us get off the ground quicker. And you can see that when we're looking at this chart here. You can see that with flaps 20 at 4,000 feet and 20 degrees C, whereas this one's 129, this one's 124. So it's going to give them a better, like a quicker takeoff, but they won't be able to get up to speed as quickly because of the increased drag. So, does anybody have any questions about any of that so far? Any comments?
No, sir.
Now, when we're looking at this, we can see that when we have our wing and cowl anti-ice on, we need to add 1 knot to each one of our speeds, right? Why do you guys think that would be necessary for us to do?
You're just pulling off performance from the compressor, which means less thrust.
Right. Because of our bleed air, we're robbing the engine of that thrust, right? So that's why we would take a hit to our speeds. Let's see. Trying to think of what else.
That's actually quite amazing that it's only 1 knot, considering you're running all that stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, you guys can see, and like it's pretty intuitive to figure out what our speeds are, right? It's not incredibly hard. So our stab trim is also something that we're going to be seeing on our flight plan here. Let's see, I think it's down on, yeah. So this is the dispatch release that you guys will be filling out. So we'll figure out the V1, VR, V2 speed and our takeoff stab trim setting. So we've gone over all of that in just that short amount of time. Let's see.
I've got a quick question, if I may.
Yeah.
On that last chart with the V1 VR speeds, it shows the temperatures on the side. The highest was 40 degrees Celsius, and then it said max temperature was like 42 or 43. What if it's hotter than that? I know there were times in Phoenix over the summer, the Phoenix to St. George route, where it would get warmer than that. Is the plane not able to fly in that, or?
That's a good question. So we do hit a point where basically it's too hot and too high for the plane to be able to get off the ground. So there is a point.
Hey, Garrett.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's plenty of times you'll see in the summer. It seems like they come in like strings of, several days in a row or like a week, like a solid week or two of just like really hot temperatures. But yeah, it's very common for us to go periods of the day like where it's too hot to operate. We just suspend operations. Several last year now at this point, last summer, 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the day in Phoenix, it's just simply too hot to operate. We even had it a couple of times in St. George, a couple of times in Vegas, Palm Springs, several places, in the Southwest is where it typically is going to happen. And a lot of it, it's the temperature. It's a mixture of things to actually get the max temperature. A lot of it has to do with the elevation. Like I think Phoenix, the max temperature is I want to say it's 48, a little over maybe 48.5 or something like that. But anyway, but we see that all the time though. It's pretty common at least for our planes. Anybody who flies the CRJs, or really any plane. I mean, that happens to a lot of different planes, but you'll see it for sure at least a couple of times every single year.
Okay, thank you.
So, when we talk about engine performance, we've got to take into consideration all the external factors. What happens from your pilot experience, Greg? What happens when you have a really hot day at altitude?
You better be leaving fuel behind.
Yeah.
Or bags, or go on a diet or something, because it extends your takeoff roll significantly to the point where you might find yourself mowing grass if you don't plan ahead.
So look at this chart. So
not to mention that the climb performance is just pretty dismal because the air is less dense than cold, dense air, and so you just a real low climb out and an extended takeoff roll are the two big ones I worried about.
So I want you guys to watch this video here. So what happens when we have really high temperatures and you're at altitude? So kind of what happens here is you well, let's look at this chart. Just 1 second. I'm trying to get it all queued up and ready for you guys.
While you're doing that, it was always nice when it was extremely cold in the winter, although pre-flight was sucked because you're checking the fuel cock, and getting fuel all over your hands, freezing to death. But the performance was just amazing. I mean, it felt like you could just go straight up in dense cold air. So
yeah. So what happens is when you have a hot temperature at a high elevation airport. So Phoenix is at what elevation? Let's see. Let's just check it out really quick.
I think it's 1168. I could be wrong, but I think it's
elevation 1135, pretty close. So it's not very high up, but due to the high temperatures that they get there, in the 115, 120 degrees on a regular basis, what happens is we get really high, what's called density altitude. So basically, what's happening at that point is the air is not nearly as dense. Think of it as like a top fuel dragster, right? When a top fuel dragster, just a vehicle in general, when a vehicle's down at sea level, that's where they do all their baseline testing, right? That's where you get your horsepower ratings, like all of that information is always done at a sea level pressure, and that's because if you were to take that same vehicle up to Salt Lake City, what happens is you lose that performance because there's just not enough air to fuel the engine, right? So you have let's see.
Just while you're looking that up, so you jump in the cockpit and you're kind of going through your pre-flight. You'll listen in, pick up your winds, and you'll pick up your mercury and dial in that new altitude, which really has nothing to do with where you're sitting on the ground. It's how hot it is, or what the temperature, what impact that's had on the altitude. So it can be dramatic in hot and very cold conditions.
Okay, so I'm going to show you guys this here. So, as this picture shows, think of this column of air as a jar full of feathers, right? Down at the bottom, you're going to have a lot of feathers, right? Because the weight of the other feathers is just pushing down on top of the feathers. But as you go up, your feathers thin out per layer, right? Because there's not as much pressure pushing down on those feathers. So think of air as the same way, right? The weight of the other air molecules are just kind of compressing the air down lower. And that's what we think of when we think of like our sea level pressure is you got all these air molecules down at sea level. But as we climb an altitude, it gets less and less dense. So the definition of density altitude is pressure altitude corrected for non-standard temperature. I got that right this time. So pressure altitude corrected for non-standard temperature. So basically, when we have a pressure altitude, we will factor in temperature at that point to get our density altitude. Now, as Greg was saying, in the wintertime in Salt Lake, there were times that I would figure out my density altitude before I'd take off. And even though I was taking off from 42,060 feet at Bonneville Sky Park, or Bountiful Sky Park, I'm sorry, a lot of times my density altitude would actually be around 1,500 to 2,000 feet. So my engine performed like I'd climb out of Bountiful, like a bat out of hell. But in the summertime at 4,260 feet, due to the temperature correction, my density altitude a lot of times would end up in the 6,000 to 6,500 foot range. So my engine performed horribly, and it just felt like a slug coming out of there. So that's exactly what happens with this chart, right? We can see as it gets hotter, it's extending that takeoff run, right? Because we got to get that extra speed. Now this doesn't seem like much, but this video will show to you what exactly that ends up doing to your aircraft. So everybody turn. The video is about 3 minutes, but everybody take a look at that video. So what did you guys think about that?
That's exactly what I meant. That's what I meant by mowing grass. Man, I can't believe you put 4 people on a hot day in that plane. That's crazy.
You know, and he's probably, well, he was an old timer that he's probably done something similar more often than not, you know. But at the same time, thinking pilot wise, had it
I
been
thought,
me, I would have been like, I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to have to come back and pick up 2 of you guys at least.
well, and that's where my confusion was, is because even before he was over the trees, you could tell for quite a while that it just was not going to climb, and it wasn't getting any better. And so I thought that maybe at that point he would come to that realization that, hey, this isn't going to work, and we've got to back out of this while there's still a place to put it down.
Yeah, and see,
Not when you
that's
have 4 friends to show off to.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
so we'll talk about human factors coming up. Excuse me, but it is a common thing, actually. You know, I don't know the specifics of this flight, but it's very common for pilots to get, you know, certain certain attitudes when flying, and that definitely played a role in this accident. But the important thing is to show you guys exactly. I'm glad you asked that question, Jordan, because that is the exact result of, you know, of us pushing this temperature limit on the aircraft. The aircraft, like you said in that video, for a propeller-driven aircraft going from, you know, 6,000 or 6,200 feet, I believe you said, to 9,100 feet. That's pretty dramatic. You know, I've flown at 12,000 feet before in a little Cessna, but on that day, I tried climbing a little bit more, and it was like, nope, I'm staying. It wouldn't let me go over 12,000, like 120. You know, it's just like, no, I'm staying here. Um, so that's the exact reason why we have those limitations on temperatures.
So
And,
You know, and I'll also say the challenge with that is when you're in off airport operations. What got me interested in flying is a guy had a bush plane, and I was just a kid. I was like 14 years old, and that's how I kind of got my start. And the challenge is you wake up in the morning, it's just crisp, beautiful, cold air, and you're goofing and playing, and you land down on a sandbar, do a little fishing, and you don't really whip your whiz wheel back out. You don't really call, you know, a flight service station and get some weather. You know, you don't do all that, and then you jump back in the plane with some fish, some poles. Next thing you know, you get overconfident because you can get out of ground effect or get up in ground effect, and then you pull up when you're over the river, and all of a sudden you're mowing treetops. It's just really dangerous.
yeah.
How can you you might have said this and I missed it, but how were they able to tell that the density of the air was that drastically different in that plane crash that we just watched?
So the NTSB will just take all of the data that they supply in our TAFs and METARs is historical. They keep track of that for this exact reason.
Oh, okay.
And so what happened was, as soon as this accident was reported to the NTSB, that's the first thing they'll do is they'll pull all of the data surrounding the time of the incident, and they'll basically recreate the crash.
Oh, okay.
For a lessons learned type thing.
Gotcha.
So they want to know, A, why it happened, and B, what do we do to prevent it from happening in the future, right? That's pretty much the entire purpose for the existence of the NTSB. And sadly, like we've said before, the entire reason why we have the rules that we have now in aviation is because of the loss of life from people before us figuring out the hard way, right?
Yep.
So I mean that's what's scary about some of this is that sometimes we just push ourselves and our equipment a little too hard, and that's what happens. But anyways,
Well,
they did. I flew with another pilot out of Wendover after the air races a few years ago, and we were in a Mooney, and we did all the check. He did all the checking, but it looked all good, and it just we got up a couple of thousand feet, and it was just absolute mush. I mean, it was just so hot. The winds just came across that desert and blew in hotter air, and had to turn around and come back and stay and wait about 5 hours till it cooled down. It
that's
just
scary.
just like Jordan said,
I
you
never
can
even
feel
would've
it. You
thought
can just
about
pull
that.
back, and it's just like there is nothing there. It just descends instead of climbs.
yeah.
Never even would have thought about that. That's crazy.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all we have time for tonight. I don't want to get into too much more due to our time. So does anybody have any questions about anything we covered today? Does anybody have any questions about the quiz?
I didn't think so.
Nothing here.
So, what are the restrictions we see with the bleed areas of the MEL?
Who wants to help him out on that one?
I didn't quite hear the question.
What are the restrictions we see with the bleed air and MEL?
I think I just had jotted down that the MEL limitations just had to do with like your weather radar. Like you don't want to have any weather problems while you're en route. I might have missed part of that, but
So we did talk about the bleed air.
I mean, because I'm trying to find it in my notes, but I can't find it. And like, pretty much all I can spot in my notes, just primary and secondary flight controls, electrical key points, auxiliary power units, just all the key stuff we went over. And I don't really get that question. That's why I was kind of asking.
Yeah, that's fine. So we're going to find it really quick in our MEL book. So everybody go to our page here. Go to course manuals. Okay. And down here is our MEL. Oh, wait, hold on. The double click on the CRJ 700 and then go to the MEL CDL manual. Now, what system is our bleed air? So air equates to?
Pneumatics.
Perfect. So what we would do is we go to our pneumatics section, page 159, right? We can just type it in down here.
I double clicked it and I'm on a different page. I'm on let's see, go to course manuals. That's what I did. Click on CRJ 700 twice. Okay, aircraft dispatchers, course manuals.
And then the MEL MEL/CDL manual.
Okay, I was clicking on the other CRJ 700. Sorry.
You're fine.
Okay. Yeah.
You're fine. Okay. So we've got our bleed air. So pneumatics are all bleed air, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the restrictions you saw there?
Hold on 1 second. Pneumatics. So pneumatics is found on the index?
Yeah, so let's see. If you come look at my screen really quick. So this is page 2 of 225 right here, right?
Okay.
Look at P, it says pneumatics, PNEUMATICS, pneumatics. If you click on that, it takes you to page 159 of 225.
The heck? Okay. Pneumatics. P. Having a hard time finding it. Okay, so I'll go on the second page of the index.
No, the second page. Page 2 of 225.
Well, I got 274 pages total. That's why I'm confused.
So come back out here. So you're in course manuals, right?
Yes. So I would click aircraft dispatch course manuals.
And this one right here, right? CRJ 700, MEL, and CDL. This file.
Yeah, that's what I clicked on right
And it
there.
pulled up this screen.
Yeah, pulled up that screen right there.
So click this download button in the top right corner.
Okay. Well,
And then,
I'm on my iPhone doing that.
oh, okay. Well, can you scroll to page 159? Because if you look right here in the index, it says page 159 right here with pneumatics, right?
Okay, I was looking for the N part, not the P, but that's the 159. Okay.
Well, pneumatics is spelled PNEA or PNEUMATICS. So
Okay, so now I'm on the pneumatics page now.
okay, so we're gonna go and all of this chapter relates to our bleed air, right? Pneumatics is our bleed air. So what are some of the operating restrictions that you see just kind of scrolling through it?
Restrictions. What is the restrictions at? I know I'm on the wrong one because it says flight FMS navigation database, and that's page 159. But
Are you looking up in the
see.
top right corner? And it says page 159 of 225.
says 159 of 274.
No, you're looking at the PDF page.
Right.
Look in the top right corner of any one of the pages that you're looking at. MEL, where it says MEL 600, 2C10, whatever. It says page 159 of 225 in the top right corner. It'll tell you your page number in reference to the actual pages in the manual. Do you see that in the very top right corner of the page?
I'm gonna have to say it's not on mine. It's not on my. It's not on here because that's the only place I can go.
Okay, well then
So-
scroll down to chapter 36.
Okay, I'm gonna start.
36.
So Matt, how are you getting into the one you're in?
Well, I'm on my iPhone, and everything on the computer, it has to be the same. I mean, my Google Drive is the same on my computer and my iPhone. But
Right. So what I'm telling you right now, Matt, is that this manual, for some reason, when you pull it up in this format, it says that there's 274 pages, but each one of the pages has a page blank of 225. You see that?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay. That makes perfect sense.
So you got to go to chapter 36 because that's where it talks about pneumatics. So what are some of the remarks or exceptions that you see that give us restrictions on our bleed air system?
Let's see. I'm almost there. 159. Okay. 62, 60. Okay, so let's see. 159. Pressure. What are the restrictions we see with bleed air? Okay. I don't want to hold anybody up. I mean, but I'm.
All right.
One.
Does anybody else have any questions on this particular part?
You just read the remarks and exceptions to figure out what it changes, right?
Right.
So right there, number 6, it says conducted at or below FL 310. Okay. So you just got to read the MBL.
Right. So our APU is operative. We're restricted to flight level 310. So APU operative doesn't mean that it has to be running. It just can't be MEL'd. It can't be deferred, right?
Okay, I see where you're coming from now. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Just when he said look at number 6, I was like, well, that's already on one of the other questions, but I see what he's talking about. Okay, so it's just that whole entire list is a list of MEL.
So yeah, so this entire book is the MEL book.
Yeah.
And
got it. Okay.
And each one of the systems is divided into chapters.
Okay.
So when we're talking about bleed air, we're talking about the pneumatic system. And so what we're looking for is what are some of the restrictions, like what are some of the things we're going to see if there's an MEL on one of our bleed air systems, what are some of the restrictions that causes for our flights?
Well, your APU is operative.
Okay. It's not a restriction, but it is something that's required to be operating. Yep.
Okay, so restriction.
It's not going to say restriction. You just got to be able to see something that restricts us when we're dispatching our flight.
Well, I wouldn't look in maintenance procedure because we don't have anything to do with maintenance.
Right? Look at our...
Operating.
Okay, go ahead. What were you saying there?
Oh, nothing. I was just kind of reading to myself. What were you saying?
So look at what I have highlighted on the screen.
Yeah, number 6. Operations are conducted at or below 31,000 feet.
Is that a restriction? Can we fly at any
Yeah.
altitude that we want?
No, you can't.
All right, so that restricts us to 31,000 feet, right?
Okay. Yeah, okay. So basically, you can kind of tell the difference between what is restricted and what is not.
Right, so one of your restrictions, you could say there's an altitude restriction when our bleed air system isn't working, right?
Okay.
Some of the other things that we see.
Yeah, so
What's a system that's controlled by our bleed air system?
air conditioning and
What?
am I correct? Oh, okay. So you're asking me what is conducted with our bleed air system?
So right now, that is what I'm asking: is what are
Okay.
what systems use the bleed air?
Well, the air conditioning panel would use bleed air, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Or air conditioning.
Our air conditioning. What else?
Has something to do with our. It has something to do with the engine. If I remember correctly, it would be engine pressurization.
Okay. What else?
Engine start.
What else?
Well, those are the only 3 I have. Engine
You're
start.
missing the big one.
So
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what else.
So the anti-ice system uses the bleed air system.
Which is why you have the 310 flight restriction.
So that, yes and no. So what are, let's see. So
well, pressurization as well. So pressurization and possible icing, but icing can happen at any altitude.
yeah, so icing, the only requirement for icing, right? The only thing that has to be present for icing to occur is temperatures of 10 degrees Celsius or less and visible moisture, right? Those are conditions for icing. So, so it says in MEL 3621-6B, it says wing anti-ice switch is selected off and operations are not conducted in known forecast or icing condition. Known or forecast icing conditions. So that's the concern with that one.
Okay.
So then, yeah. So when we're talking about like what are some of the restrictions that are placed on a flight, or what What are the restrictions associated with the bleed air system? You just kind of go through this list of pneumatics, because that's where what we're asking for, right? Just kind of figure out a couple of these MELs, just like operations conducted at or below 310. Let's see.
What about?
You can't fly
Sorry.
into known or forecast icing conditions. Like those are the two big ones, right? Now, yeah, I mean those are the big hitters that we see with the bleed air system.
Okay. So I'll just kind of I'll study these pages a lot more because I need to.
Yeah, and the ones that we're really wanting you to understand is just kind of go through this list, and we want you to understand the bleed air system, which is pneumatics. We want you to also understand the AC packs. So what are the restrictions associated with an AC pack being out, right?
Okay.
And then what are the restrictions with what are the common so the air conditioning pack, the bleed air system, and the weather radar. Those are the ones we want you to know right now. So go into this MEL list and look up each one of those. I wanted to kind of walk you through how to look up these because you're going to have to look them up. Most likely, well, for the flight planning we're going to do is we're going to start throwing MELs at you after the first couple and having you apply those to the flight. And then the other thing is that you'll likely receive a couple MELs. More than likely, you'll receive a couple MELs that are going to be on your practical test. So we want you to understand. It is like imperative that you understand how to look up these MELs. So the big thing with everything we do dispatch wise when we're looking at manuals is always go to the index because that's going to tell us where to look. We know AC packs, air conditioning packs, so we'd go to page 10. If we look for the pneumatics, we go here to the pneumatic section, and then if we look at weather protection or weather radar, we would want to look at I'm going to say it's going to be there's a couple places that it could be. I'd probably start looking in, first of all, like the ice and rain protection. I'd also look into like the navigation section. But another thing that you can do is you can also use the Control F function when searching with these manuals. So if you hit Control F and you type in weather radar, it will pull up the weather radar system. So there's the weather radar MEL right there, 34-41-1. and there's the restriction associated with it. Does that make sense? So if you're ever looking for something, you can always control F it in the MELs, and that will get you started. It's probably easier to start in the index, but if worse comes to worse, you can always do that control F, the search function, and it'll pull up everything in that document with that. So go through, just kind of do a run through of the weather radar, then do a run through the bleed system, and then a run through of the AC packs, and just see the big things that pop out to you as far as what restrictions are caused by those being MEL'd. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. I'll start looking at these ones, but yeah, and I was just curious because this chapter has just been kind of confusing to me, so that's just why I'm just having a difficult time with this chapter. So,
Right. And that's why I wanted to show you this, because that's the big part of this is going to be looking at these MELs, and I just wanted to cover that pretty thoroughly with you as how to find them. So,
okay, well, I'll look over these tonight then.
All right. Does anybody else have? What was
thanks,
that?
though.
Yeah, no problem. Does anybody else have any questions before we shut it down tonight?
No, good stuff. Thanks, Garrett.
Yeah, no problem. All right, everybody, have a good night, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.